Just how well educated is your customer before you talk to them for the first time? You don't know the half of it. Stick around.
Welcome to The Buyer's Mind, where we take a closer look deep inside your customer's decision-making mechanism to reverse engineer the perfect sales presentation. Now, please welcome your host, Jeff Shore.
Well, welcome everyone to The Buyer's Mind, where we investigate exactly what's going on in the minds of our prospects that are considering a purchasing decision. This podcast is all about taking a stroll through the buyer's brain. It's about knowing that customer so well that sale begins to roll out right in front of you. I'm your host, Jeff Shore. You can read the full bio in the show notes, or you can visit jeffshore.com and make sure you're checking out our blog, and you can find all of our social media links there as well. I want to start by telling you just a quick little story here. My wife and I were vacationing in Lake Tahoe. It was actually an extended family vacation for her parents' 65th wedding anniversary. And while we were there, we started to look at it and say, boy, what would I like to own a place up here? And so I opened up the Redfin app that I carry on my phone. It's a great app, and I'm not just saying that because they're a client of ours. It's a really, really useful app. And it gave me so much information. Now, I want to be clear, I've not reached out to an agent at Redfin yet, but as I was using that app, I was learning all this information about the homes that we might want to see. But the point is that when we do talk to a salesperson, how far down the path are we? And I think this is the journey that our customer is on. Before you talk to that customer for the first time, they might be so much better informed than you have ever given them credit for. And of course, that changes everything. And so there you have it. Your customer is probably more educated than you think. And our guest today, the one and only Mike Lyon, is going to give us some really interesting insight on that. You're going to love it. Murph, welcome back. I know you're still recovering here from your trip to Europe here. Was there, as you're thinking back on it here, this is what we have to ask. You were in England, you were in Ireland. Tell me you ordered a Guinness somewhere along the line.
Not only did I order a Guinness, I ordered a Murphy's.
Mr. Paul Murphy, order of Murphy's. Did you have a little fun with that while you're over there with your namesake? And did anybody buy you a pint?
Nobody bought me a pint. I was a little worried I would owe people money because of the family name. I'm not sure what the Murphys were doing over there in Ireland, but I think they were making more trouble than it was worth.
Well, that would be consistent with who you are. So there you go. All good. Well, welcome back. Let me give you our quote of the day. This is from composer Marvin Hamlish, who says, "You mustn't underestimate an audience's intelligence." Our customers, our audience, if you will, are so much smarter than we sometimes give them credit for. But how do you know? And my advice is this: ask. Just ask. Ask the question, how much experience have you had with ... Or I want to make sure I'm helping you as best I can. Have you ever purchased anything like this before? Make sure that you are getting into the context of what your customer already knows. You don't want to talk below your customer's level of intelligence, and you don't want to talk above it either. And the only way you can do that for sure is to ask. You mustn't underestimate an audience's intelligence. Hey, our thanks to Home Street Bank, our show sponsor out there, our good friends there. Our show sponsor, also my lender of choice. I used them in my last real estate purchase. Really, really strong. And I've purchased a number of homes. But I got to tell you, everybody I talked to is professional, dependable, great service, fantastic rates. If you're a real estate professional, you want to align yourself with somebody who's really going to take care of your clients, and that would be Home Street Bank. You can do it all. Banking, home loans, credit lines, you name it. Go to homestreetbank.com to learn more. That's homestreetbank.com. Now, coming up in just a few minutes, an interview with Mike Lyon. But before we do that, let me give you your tip of the day. Start marking your response time in seconds rather than in hours. Now, most companies, they've got a set time here. When you get an inquiry from a customer, you need to get back to them within so many hours. I'm going to suggest you're better off thinking in terms of seconds. And I know that sounds bizarre, but stay with me, because what you really want to do is surprise and delight your customer, right? So if you respond to an inquiry while they are still thinking about it, That's what will shock them. That's what will shock them into loyalty, because they're going to see not only how responsive you are, but at the time that you reach back to them, they're still thinking about the very inquiry that they sent. So their emotions are still high. They are still invested in this. And that's when you're talking to them. I would so much rather do that than 2 hours later when they're back at work or dealing with a family crisis or whatever it happens to be. Start marking your response time in seconds rather than hours. I want to invite you to join us for the 2017 Jeff Shore Sales Leadership Summit and Expo. This is to help you become a better leader for your team, to grow your business in ways you never thought possible, and to take your career to the next level. This is the premier gathering for real estate executives, for real estate sales executives. Although I have to tell you, we've had people from all different industries, and they've always gotten so much out of this. But the target lessons are for real estate executives, and you're going to learn from the best of the best about what it takes to make you a better leader, manager, and coach. More insights, more strategies, and more aha moments than ever before. We've been doing these summits for years, and they just keep getting bigger and better. Hundreds of leaders from all around North America, and actually all around the world, descend on Coronado. That's right, just outside of San Diego at the Lowe's Coronado Resort. Bring your significant other. Stay for a few days. We meet on Thursday and Friday, but most people spend the weekend. And listen, there are worse places to be in August than Coronado Island in San Diego. It's absolutely spectacular. If you're interested in attending the summit, just visit jeffshore.com/summit. And if you use the promo code BuyersMind, just all one word, no apostrophe, BuyersMind, we'll take $200 off the registration price. All right, well, hey, let's get to our guest here. You know, consumer behaviors have changed. We know that. Information is ubiquitous. Most people shopping for especially high-priced items, they conduct their research online. There was a stimulus, and now instead of walking in the store or the front door, they jump on their phone and they grab their laptop. So how do sales professionals, and especially experienced professionals, shift their process to embrace a lead instead of ignoring a lead? And today I'm joined by Mike Lyon. He's the founder and president of doyouconvert.com. I believe you can find him at that same web address. Mike is not an authority. He is the authority on online shopping habits. And today we're going to talk about what we don't know about our customers and the way that our customers are searching. So, Mike Lyon, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you, Jeff, for having me. I appreciate it. I remember having you on the Facebook Live interview, and your podcasting studio was all set up. And I just said, "Hey, are you going to do a podcast?" And it turned out that you were, and I did not know that. It was pretty good.
That's we go.
Deductive. That's deductive.
That's deductive, and it's really been a lot of fun because we get a lot of really talented guests on. I am learning so much from our guests, and I expect nothing less from you, my friend. So let's get into this here. We've got this. We're thinking about shopping habits of customers. There's a dangerous and maybe damaging combination. Rapidly changing shopping habits, slow to change sales habits. I know this is right in your world. This is kind of what you do. So I'm going to ask you to back up and tell our audience kind of how you got started in this journey. And then let's talk about that idea of the conflict between how quickly customers are changing their shopping habits, but how slow we are often to respond on the sales side.
Oh, absolutely. And I was fortunate to kind of come up when the internet was really reaching the mainstream. And I loved that opportunity to reach a wide audience. And I also loved to sell. So my background was putting both of those together. And then you fast forward to the mid 2000s, and I was able to take a position with a builder developer as online sales and marketing director. And what that means was all these people looking for homes, you know, they wanted information and they were going online instead of going on site. But the store, you know, the website store was open, but it wasn't being monitored. So that was back when there weren't great processes in place. There weren't a lot of people doing it. And this whole idea of managing a quote unquote lead was unheard of. So we had to develop that as we went along. successful program. And I've had a good fortune to work with a lot of large organizations now since then, helping them implement and improve online sales and marketing programs. So that's the background. But like you said, it comes from necessity. The reason why so many organizations need to take advantage of this is if they don't, they're going to mess it up. And it's like it's an Achilles heel for so many different organizations, specifically luxury items like you guys talk about so much on this podcast. It's huge because there's so much research being done.
When I think about the habits of shoppers online and how much information is available to them, I find it almost surprising if a sales professional is not well prepared for that. And I told the story earlier in this podcast about shopping for actually a vacation home, but using Redfin in order to do it. And just the Redfin app on my phone enough was plenty to be able to keep me fully engaged, fully informed, fully educated, long before I talk to a salesperson. So whether it's a home or a car or life insurance or whatever it is, the sheer amount of information is overwhelming. That's got to change the role of the salesperson.
Oh, absolutely. The shift is huge. I mean, you can get anything with a swipe of your finger in a couple of seconds. And the challenge is for sales reps is just making sure they understand that all of this is happening before they ever meet with you face to face. And a lot of times before they even, fill out a form or pick up the phone and call. And back on your podcast with Nick Webb, I loved that because he talked about, the pre-touch and the first touch, and that first touch is the experience that a customer is going to have. And you've got to take care of that. If not, they're going to disqualify you. You talked about the stimulus at the beginning. That's the zero moment of truth. Google talks about this all the time. They are spending all this time researching and getting right to that finish line. They fill out a form and they reach out, and then it's crickets. And so you have to think about different ways as an organization, as a leader, as a salesperson. How are we treating these leads, before they ever come and have that initial contact with us? And so that's the big thing that we focus on. And it's amazing what happens if you just put a little bit of effort into that. You'll actually see results go through the roof and just crush the competition, because a lot of the competition just is not doing it. And we do a survey every single year where we go online and we fill out a form on a website and we put everything on there, including a phone number, which is crazy. And we actually ask a specific question, and you'd be surprised. Almost 40% of the time, there is no emails, no email contact back. And roughly between 70 and 85%, no phone call. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's just nuts.
Yeah, when you look at how much money gets spent to try and gather information by marketers and to try and find the right contact information, and here you have somebody who's giving it up for free and they still can't get that call or response. It's just absolutely insane. Do you think part of it, Mike, is just the idea that we still haven't really taken that online shopper seriously, that we might tend to look at it and say, you know what, they're still in that information gathering mode. They're really not that interested yet because, after all, they haven't talked to me. How interested could they be? I'm being facetious here, but I'm wondering if that's not part of the issue.
Well, there's two things that are going on. Number one is DNA. I mean, when you think about sales professionals, they tend to follow more. And I'm not going to make a huge generalization, but if you want someone great, you want someone who can, be fine with discomfort. They can understand that they're going to be rejected a lot of the time. They can ask for the sale, right? They can move forward. I mean, they're more of a hunter personality. And the role for managing a prospect online, a new lead, is more of a farmer. So it's different. You've got to be able to nurture. It doesn't matter if they buy today. It doesn't matter if they buy next week. It doesn't matter if they buy in a year. It doesn't matter where they're buying from, what they're purchasing. You are taking care of that prospect and you're doing lead nurturing. So the first challenge that you have is just that difference in DNA. The second is, you're exactly right. Half the time leads will not engage. And so a traditional sales rep is used to someone walking in the door, meeting them. They are already engaging right off the bat. But half of leads will never respond back to your follow-up, back to your outreach. And so with that, they kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater and say online leads are bad. It's well, no, they're not. They're not. Just half of them aren't ready to talk to you yet.
Right. Yeah. But how would we know if we're not willing to call them back in the first place? Yeah. You were talking about how you do the survey where you go out there, you're going to actually ask a question that demands a response. You're giving them the phone number and email address. This is marketing gold, of course, which right from the very beginning ought to be a clue, because I remember reading somewhere about this statistic called the bounce off rate, where if you're sort of maneuvering through a website and you say, oh, I'm interested in what that might cost, and I click on a link and it says, yeah, sure, give us your name, address, phone number, email address, bank account number, social security, and then we'll get back to you. And boy, we can't bounce off that page quickly enough, right? We really cannot. We generally do not want to give out that information. So if we do give out that information, there's got to be a profound message there that customer is trying to tell us, and we are just flat out ignoring.
That's exactly right. And you're referring to something they call gated information, or, putting a gate up, which is fine. But even in your website that could not have a gate, just, hey, reach out to us when you have questions. The alarming statistic, or really not alarming, people just don't know it, only 1% to 3% of unique visitors to a website will ever fill out a form. So you've got 99% of the people who are not ready to talk to you yet, but the 1% who finally are, and we're getting numbers and all stuff. It's like, this is the best of the best of the best. We need to be responding to them. And even responses from websites, from third-party referral sites, all of this is extremely low. And like you talked about, that being gold, that lead in most industries is worth $75, $150, $250. For us not to respond is like, let's just put a butane torch to that, and light it on fire, because we've damaged our brand, and we're not taking care of that first touch, that first moment of truth. And we're going to have an issue for sure. Right.
Here on The Buyer's Mind, we really talk about the psychology of what customers go through when they're in that buying process. And I'm just looking at it even from the perspective of the psychological risk that a customer takes when they do reach out online, and then what happens when they are ignored. And, I'm in the market for a new dentist. It's been, I don't want to say exactly how long it's been, but it's probably been a little longer than it should have been for me to visit. And it's because I moved a couple of years ago, and I don't want to schlep all the way back up the hill to get the dentist. So I did some online search, and I found this one dentist just based on their website that said, we are so friendly, we're so nice, and, we're not going to shame you, and we're going to make it as easy as possible. Like, these are just great individuals. This is who I want to work with. And I went to their contact page, and I said, here's the situation, and it was like when can you get me in, and whatever. I did exactly what they told me to do. Crickets. Nothing. And I am following your instructions, and I still got nothing. And I end up looking at it, and I end up making a big sweeping generalization about the entire practice based on the fact that you will not respond to your own instructions from me. And I know it's just one simple example, but I have a feeling that's happening all over the place every single day.
Every single day. And what's interesting, what's the lifetime value of you as a customer to a dentist? It's huge, number one. Number two, they may have technology that can reverse look up your IP address and figure out you have poor dental hygiene, Jeff, and that may be the other issue. But I don't want to get into that on this podcast. We've got the Dental Association podcast. But anyway, this is, like you said, what's the investment? Someone's been researching something for 5 months. They finally build up the courage to press submit. Yeah. And they know what's going to happen. you're going to follow up a million times and and nothing. Right. And that's a huge challenge. And I think a lot of leaders, because they're leaders and they haven't come up in the world of online and technology and response rates, they don't see visualization into it because it's not physical. And there's a disconnect. But I mean, come on, if we can order something off Amazon and get it the next day, but we fill out a form online and we can't get a sales rep to follow up in 48 hours. Right.
Right.
There's a problem. I mean, we've been trained. I mean, that's the challenge is we've been trained with high-speed internet, everything at the tip of our fingers. We've been trained to expect fast responses, but many times it's either slow or no response.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at the damage that we do to our brand, to our process, to the chances that that customer is ever going to want to do business with us in the first place. Because you're right, Mike. If I'm sitting there and even if I am going to fill out a contact form online, boy, my right index finger sort of hovers above the enter button, wondering, am I really going to click send on this? And there's an emotional risk. I'm sort of putting myself out there for you when I do this, only to be flat out ignored. And now we're just replaying 7th grade for me, and that's just never healthy. Let's talk about speed here, because I know that this is something else that you really do focus in on, and especially as it relates to the idea of the online shopping experience. If I'm online, I'm doing my investigation, and I might hit send and ask for information. How I am feeling about that information, about connecting with an organization at that moment I hit send, is very different than how I'm going to feel even an hour later, and certainly a day later, and then a week later, I don't even know who you are.
That's right. And there's a reason for that. It's the height of the emotional buy-in. It's like, okay, we're actually doing this. So speed to lead is the number one conversion factor. For anybody listening to this right now, if you just build your program on a foundation of speed, you're going to solve half of your problems. We joke around, we say speed covers a multitude of sins. I mean, you can do a lot of things wrong, but at least if we're communicating with someone quickly, that equals I care to the customer. So you absolutely have to be fast. The stats support it. People have a short attention span. They're not going to sit around and wait for you. And they also have a short memory, right? So they're going to forget who was I talking to? What did I fill this out? Where was this from? Who's this person? So speed to lead is, when we have the process in place, that is one of the biggest factors for sure.
I think there's a real symmetry here. We did several years ago a survey in the home building industry and discovered something really interesting, and that is that the longer someone stays in the process without purchasing, the less likely it is that they're going to purchase. So if they're making the decision and they're their first couple of visits to a new home community, that's all good. But the longer they keep coming in without making a decision, the less likely it is that they're going to buy. And that came down to the idea that they move farther and farther away from their initial emotional appeal. It sounds like this is exactly the same behavior that you're seeing online. That you talked about the height of the emotional buy-in, I think were the words that you used, at the time that I'm shopping is going to wane, and maybe wane dramatically as I move further and further away without any kind of communication with an organization.
That's exactly right. And in most industries, you're going to see it pretty similar. Whether it's a new home, whether it's leasing an apartment, that's even faster. In the auto industry, they say it's like 2 to 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that's where speed is crucial just from the initial contact. But then you have to have a process in place, because a lot of people will go, well, yeah, I got back to him fast and I called him and I emailed him, but they never responded. They're not interested. No, they're busy and they're doing other things. And it's baseball season and their kids in, little league, and they have to be at the field all day long. So you have to stay in front of those prospects for that first 30 days is crucial from a process standpoint. You're trying to reach out to them multiple times, but then also without neglecting the fact that persistence counts as well. Mm-hmm. So aged leads, leads that have been in the database more than 3 months, 6 months, that can make up a good 30, sometimes even 40% of sales, but often forgot. We can't get people to think past the weekend, let alone think out 2 months. And so when you put all of those things together on top of that with the message, right? The messaging always has to be customer first. And I'm here to help, and I'm here to take care of you, not buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. So even people who are following the process but have a message that says buy, 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 that'll turn somebody off. So you got to put all of those things together, and you have to do it 100% of the time to get the results that we talk about. And it's a really hard thing to do, especially if you're not focusing on it or you don't have the right person in the seat.
Do you think you mentioned just I think a really important insight here about, hey, the whole time that they're going through this process of thinking about buying your home or your car, your jewelry, your insurance, whatever it happens to be, life is going on. I've got issues at work and my teenager's a pain and I got to get to a soccer game and all of this stuff. Do you think that sometimes frontline sales professionals sort of give up because they think, well, if I'm not hearing from them aggressively, if they're not responding that quickly, it probably means that they're no longer interested?
Oh, we make that assumption all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's because we're focusing on the here and now. And the other side is, just think about it in real life, human nature. If you were reaching out to somebody and they were ignoring you, you get upset, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if I was trying to reach out to my friend and they weren't calling me back or they weren't texting me back or they weren't emailing me back, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? They're like, we're not friends anymore. And it's hard because you're like, well, I don't want to bother them and I don't want to be a pest to the prospect and I don't want, this and that. And there is truth to that, mm-hmm. but the customer will tell you when it's enough.
Right.
The customer will tell you mm-hmm. when it's time to stop. And here's what we see all the time. We don't ever hear managers or leadership complaining about calls from prospects of too much follow-up. Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen. It's always the opposite. I called them, they didn't call me back. I emailed them, they wouldn't call me back. So don't be afraid. I mean, that's just fear of following up, and they shouldn't be afraid of that because it is a crucial part of the sales process. If it wasn't, we would sell 80% of the prospects walking in the door, mm-hmm. but we don't.
Right. Mike, how do you stay current on trends, on consumer behavior? How do you make sure that you know what's going on well enough to be able to go back to your clients and say, hey, this is what you need to know?
I listen to this podcast called The Buyer's Mind. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's phenomenal. No, but seriously, I try to absorb podcasts are great for me. Anytime it's like rolling university. Anytime you're in the car, on a plane, when I'm traveling to meet clients, I'm trying to listen to podcasts. Mm-hmm. I read a lot online, which is great. And then I do audiobooks. I'll do some printed books every once in a while, but I'm a big audiobook fan. So I always try and at least spend, probably I'd say collectively 30 minutes a day mm-hmm. in current books and everything. Like when I heard Nick Webb, I'd never heard of his book, What Customers Crave, and that was from your podcast. So I got it immediately, and it's fantastic. So you can always pick up nuggets and things like that from people around you. But I really try to do that. A lot, absorbed from other places. You always have to be learning, or you get stagnant, you get bored, you get rusted out, and that's never a good thing.
You and I have a common interest in sort of appifying our lives and our businesses as much as possible. We are both zero emails in our inbox people. That's I've got my merit badge sitting on my desk as we speak. What are some of the tools that you often recommend to sales professionals to help them to be more effective and more efficient in the way that they're reaching out to that online shopper?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably one of the biggest ones that I like to put in front of a sales rep is using video email. We use a app and a tool called BombBomb. The more that you can put your face and everything else that comes in those non-verbal communications in front of a customer, that's huge to get a result a lot quicker. That's a big one. Obviously, leveraging any kind of CRM. That's the coolest thing about being able to connect with your online shopper is if you're actually in a CRM, if you've got them in there, you can get notifications of when that customer comes back to your website. You get notifications of when they open emails. Mm-hmm. And for a sales rep, I mean, that's just invaluable. It's like maybe now's a good time to pick up the phone and actually call. Mm-hmm. So that's a great tool. And another one that's fun if you like to make a lot of phone calls, which, surprise, surprise, in this world of online and digital, the value of a phone call has like doubled or even tripled what it used to be because everybody just wants to text and email, but a call is actually a great way to get good engagement and get a buyer to move forward. We like to use a tool called Phone Burner, and that allows you to put 100 people in and it auto dials for you. So you don't get call fatigue. Your fingers don't wear out. You can even leave a pre-recorded voicemail if it's about something specific. And you can burn through calls at 400 times the normal rate. So those are 3 tools that are just crucial. If you want to get serious about reaching out to a database and being effective, it can set your sales on fire and you can do some serious damage in a matter of 2 hours a day of prospecting. you could prospect like you're 4 people.
And the thing that's interesting is it's really not that difficult, right? It's just that most people aren't taking even that simple step. It's not that hard, but it stands out dramatically because people aren't taking that simple step. So I'm looking back, for example, to my last birthday. I remember on my last birthday 2 things. I got a card from my mother-in-law, and I just remember that so well because there was a check for $100 in it. So I got a card from my mother-in-law, and I got a video email from you, Mike Lyon. That's all I remember about my last birthday. But what's the point here? Well, why does that stand out? Because nobody does it. And so if we can look at it and say, here are the things that are not that difficult, but nobody else is doing. See, to me, and I think you're going to agree with me on this, Mike, I don't know why video email has not absolutely taken off as the preferred method of being able to connect with customers. It's so fresh. It's so it's should not be cutting edge, but for some reason it still is.
Yeah. We've been talking about it since 2008. That's about the same time you went to your last dentist appointment. And it's just the fear. You talk so much about discomfort. I've gotten, to listen to you a lot, and it is not comfortable to see yourself up there on the screen, or you may not be comfortable with the way that you look, but it's just the way you look, and they're going to see you eventually. Mm-hmm. So you've got to get over those things. It is not about the tool. It is not about the app. It's about the discipline.
Right.
And that's it is like kind of ironic. It's like, guys, if you just put this in place, you're spending time doing something. If you do this, we know it's proven to work. And I think the big thing too, just tying into your audience and your message, is extending that coffee worthiness mm-hmm. to the digital side. Yeah. Like when you're not in front of somebody, how do you make that happen? That is not something that is trained very often to sales teams. Awesome. We train them how to do it face to face. But when you're talking about doing that over email, over the phone, over text message, over video email, that's usually, one little training once a year. And so it just takes a lot of work. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
We're out of time. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Mike. Give us one piece of life advice. We've been talking about business advice. We've been talking about how to be successful with those online shoppers. We've been talking about the mentality of people who are shopping online. But you've got wisdom beyond your years. Give us a piece of life advice.
Well, I'll steal it from Zig Ziglar. He's always a good person to steal from. Sure. But I think this carries through. When you talk about all this stuff and reaching out to people and everything, and people go, well, that's just too salesy, that's too aggressive. I don't think it is when you put the customer first. And he always says, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And that's what it really is all about, is just taking care of the customer first. And that customer's online a majority of the time. So you've got to make sure, as a sales professional, as a leadership in an organization, you have to be paying attention to that online customer.
Fantastic. That is just such great stuff. And people can learn anything that they need to learn, including how to follow you, how to get to all your social stuff. It's all through doyouconvert.com, correct?
That's right. You can find me there. I am on all those magical social platforms and doing Facebook Live, even though it's uncomfortable. We do it.
Mike Lyon, thanks so much for being on The Buyer's Mind. Appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you go, Murph. Mike Lyon, you get the sense you could just talk to that guy all day long and he's going to drop little truth bombs on you?
Not only that, but he's a quick wit. Very quick.
He is indeed. Yeah, a really good guy to spend time with it. I love just some of the perspective that he brought to this. The very idea of hunter personality versus farmer personality. And I think in sales, look, we love the instant gratification. We love getting the sale right now. But I sort of got the sense that when it comes to how you nurture that online, you need to be prepared that this could take a little bit of time, but the payoff is going to be great.
Well, and some great lessons there that I really hadn't thought about, and that is, moving faster. We tend to think, you got to be slow, got to be cautious, maybe on the buyer's side, but on the sales side, you got to be fast. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole speed to lead that Mike talked about is critical, and every minute counts as we move farther and farther away from their initial inquiry. I do find it interesting, and I'm sure you're the same way, Murph, where I get to that page where they ask for contact information, and I oftentimes cannot click off that page fast enough. Is that just me, or are you in that same boat?
No, I'm very cautious about what information I give away these days.
Sure, yeah. So if you are going to fill out that contact form, it must mean that you're pretty darn interested.
Yeah, I'm committed. At that point, I really want to know what I want to know. So I'm willing to give that information away if somebody's going to respond.
Sure, absolutely. Mike Lyon is the master here. And again, we want to encourage you, go over to doyouconvert.com, follow him online. He's just got a wealth of information and knowledge for you. All right, as we head into the wrap up here, let me just ask you a question. What is your role as a sales professional? Because I want to suggest it's not simply about offering information. It's much more about applying information. And that means you need to know your customer well. Now, I know we've all heard that. I'm supposed to discover. I'm supposed to be able to do that qualifying and all that. Here's my question. Are you gutsy enough to really dig deep? You see, the information is out there for everybody. It's a matter for the sales professional of how we apply that information, but I can only do that when I know that customer well. So are you willing to dig deep? Are you willing to go deeper? Are you willing to say, that's interesting, tell me more? Or how did that affect you? Or I'm kind of curious why you responded that way. Those follow-up questions, those dive deeper questions are the questions that are going to unlock pieces of information about your customer that will be absolutely invaluable. But the problem is, too many salespeople are simply not gutsy enough to ask those questions. I want to challenge you. Be gutsy. Dig deep. And then you'll know exactly how to apply the value information that you have. Well, we appreciate you listening to the podcast. We appreciate you getting the word out there and letting other people know about the podcast as well. If you consider posting a link on your social media page, we would really, really appreciate it. But that's our wrap on our podcast today. Hope you enjoyed it. You can find everything you're looking for at jeffshore.com. Until next time, go out there and change someone's world.